Hey, I'm Greg.
And I'm Gary.
We're here with Desolate Motorsports, and we want to introduce the new 7.3 Power Stroke Saginaw Conversion Pump Kit. So this is a product we've been working on for a while in the background, and we already make this conversion kit for the gas engines, all of the small block platforms, and the 460. This is something that was requested a million times by you guys out there, and it's for the 94.5 to 97 Power Stroke Diesel 7.3 models, a very popular platform, as most of you know. Problem with the factory pump is that, one, it's just a notorious piece of shit. It has a plastic reservoir. It has terrible whining noises that come from it for absolutely no reason. And this was a problem all the way back in the 90s. Fast forward 30 years, the aftermarket options are even worse. So it's kind of a saga. And we rectified all of that with this new pump conversion kit. It's something we already knew worked because we've done it a million times on the gas trucks. We sell a ton of those conversion kits. That's why I wanted to do it for the diesels, because it makes your truck drive better. It makes your truck not have the notorious whine anymore. It's going to work for a factory truck. It's going to work for a truck you're using for towing. It's going to work with a truck with just larger tires. And Gary's going to kind of touch on what other features and the design elements to it and what you can expect from the install side of things.
So what we've designed here is a full steel bracket, replacement bracket. It's going to utilize your factory AC compressor here with the factory hardware. It does accept your factory vacuum pump if you are running it. If you're not, no worries, nothing needs to go there. We are using the Saginaw pump that we've been using on all the gas trucks for the last 8+ years, which is we've had tremendous luck with. Nice 8-rib billet pulley here with laser engraving on it. Comes with your return hose, your pressure hose, and your adapter fittings for your steering box. It is a plug and play system here. The install is pretty straightforward on this. It's going to use the factory Serpentine belt. If yours is good, reuse it. If not, now's a perfect opportunity, since you're going to be popping it off, to put something new on there. I'm going to show you the step-by-step install. It's very easy, something you can do in your driveway or your garage. No big deal at all. We got a 97 F250 7.3 Power Stroke here we're going to be doing the install on today. If you have an aftermarket air filter setup or intercooler piping, anything that's going to block over this general area here, you will need to remove it to gain access to removing this pump and bracket assembly. The S&B intake is not anywhere in the way. As you can see here, it's wide open, so this one's going to stay in place, but depending on what you have, you may need to remove that. First step in this whole process is definitely going to be removing your factory serpentine belt here. We're going to start with a 14 or 15 millimeter socket, depending on some aftermarket stuff is a little bit different, but you're going to go here to this tensioner pulley, and you're going to put your socket and your ratchet on there. And what you're going to do is you're going to go like you're loosening it in reverse, and you're going to take that slack off and pull this belt out of the way here. Careful for your fingers when you let this back that you don't get in the way. That's why I like using this longer ratchet. Once you get this serpentine belt out of the way, the next step is going to be removing the electrical connections here on your AC compressor. So for this connection here on the AC compressor, I like to use this little 90-degree pick. You can get behind there, lift that up, and then you could pull this off out of the way. For this one here, it's got a little tab on the bottom side, and what you're going to do is you're going to lift up with your finger and just pull that right off out of the way. So the next step here is we're going to get this AC compressor out of the way. You're going to remove these 4 10 millimeter headed bolts here. Leave all these lines connected, and we're just going to flop this thing out of the way. So what we'll do is we'll put a rag here on this intake tube so we don't scratch it all up. And let's remove these 10 millimeter headed bolts. We will be reusing the factory hardware with the new bracket, so let's just set that aside. Make sure that you move these wires out of the way. They don't get caught up in anything, so you don't damage any of the clips or anything of that sort. In some cases on some of these trucks, maybe these AC lines have been replaced in the past. Usually what I found with the factory setup is this compressor is able to swing out of the way. These ones have been replaced. They're a little bit shorter than factory, so all I did here was just grab a bungee cord, wrap it around the hood hinge, and hold this thing out of the way just so you could gain access down here. Next, we're going to drain all the fluid out of the factory pump. It's going to probably make a mess. Get yourself a drain pan as big as possible. I laid down a piece of cardboard here on the ground just for residual so you don't wreck your driveway completely, but Once you crack the lines, you'll find out where the leak is. So we're gonna start here with this pressure line going into the pump. It's an 11/16 wrench that you're gonna need to get in there. So let's get that on there. Crack that loose and thread it off with your fingers. Leaking a little bit. But the next one is gonna be the return line that we have to get off, and that's gonna start making a mess. Here on the back side of this reservoir, there is a return line. It's got one of those wing style clamps where you have to grab pliers and squeeze them together. We're gonna stick these pliers down here, get those squeezed apart and pushed out of the way. Once you get that clamp off, that hose is just pressed onto your reservoir, the return hose. So what you're gonna wanna do is slide it off, but as soon as you slide this off, that reservoir is gonna start emptying out. So it's gonna make a mess with the fluid, but here we go. We'll pull it off real quick and we'll readjust our drain pan as needed. Luckily, I'm a pretty good aim. The next step is we're gonna pull this bracket off. There's 4 bolts, they're kind of hidden. There's 2 here that are very accessible. There's gonna be one that's under your vacuum pump, and there's gonna be one that's down here in the bottom, basically in the 9 o'clock position from the center of your power steering pulley. So there's 4 of them down there. So I like to loosen all of them, leave them threaded in. Don't just start taking them all out because this thing does have some weight. It wants to start swinging around. It'll start fighting you. So just get them all broken loose and then we'll go back and pull them out one at a time. I like to get all the bolts out. There is, if your truck is still running the factory vacuum pump, the vacuum line that goes into it does have one of those squeeze clamps as well. Like I said, I like to get the bolts out of the way so I can gain access, kind of lay it over a little bit. So we'll go ahead and get that off now. Most of the time these vacuum lines are kind of stuck on there. What I like to do is get in here with a big flathead screwdriver and get to the bottom of that hose and just start prying back and help that hose off of there. It'll pop right off. Now we're ready to pull this thing out. Let's get this hunk of junk out of here. So we got the factory pump and bracket assembly out of here. This truck does not have Hydro Boost, so it is gonna retain the factory vacuum pump here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get these 3 10 millimeter headed bolts out of the way so we can get this bracket swapped over to our new bracket here. So we got our vacuum pump off of our bracket here. Now this thing's pretty much useless. This is our new bracket. These 3 bolt holes here, threaded bolt holes, are what's gonna retain our vacuum pump. So right into place. We'll get the 3 bolts threaded. Your truck's 30 years old. You're trying to fix your steering issues. One thing that's really important is the factory steering system uses an ATF. This new steering system is going to be using a power steering fluid. If you're using the factory steering box, you really need to get all that fluid out of there so we're not mixing the two. Right now is a perfect opportunity while you're fixing your steering to replace that steering box. We do offer those on our website as well, but if you're not doing it, you really want to make sure that you try to get all that fluid out of that steering box so you don't contaminate your fluid. So what you're going to want to do now is you're going to want to get these front wheels off the ground so we can cycle the steering back and forth. By doing that, we're going to drain or try to evacuate all the factory ATF out of the steering system. I'm using 2 4 jacks. If you don't have 2 4 jacks, you could jack up each side one at a time, put a jack stand under each frame rail, and do the same thing. So your factory steering lines are still connected to your steering box right now. Here's your pressure line. Your return line is here. What I like to do is just get your pressure line, put it down here, hook it around a line or something, and do the same with the return before we start cycling the steering wheel back and forth to drain all this excess fluid out of the steering box. Now we're going to open up the door. We're going to go to the key on position. We are not going to start the engine, just key on so we can unlock the steering column. And what we're going to do now is we're going to cycle the wheel back and forth from left to right. You don't need to do it super fast. Let's just start moving it at a reasonable pace, and that fluid should start making its way out, hopefully into your drain pan. And just keep doing it back and forth until you don't see any more fluid coming out. Now that we've got all that fluid evacuated from the factory steering box, what you're going to want to do before you start putting any new bracketry or anything of that sort in there, let's get this area cleaned up. We got some power steering fluid on the exhaust manifold here. Let's just give it a quick bath and let's get this area all cleaned up with some clean rags. All right, guys, so at this point, what we're going to want to do is we have to get this factory pressure line out of the way. You'll see here, I'm tugging on this thing. It's going to be the fitting in the steering box that's closest to the front bumper of the vehicle. We're going to grab a 1/2-inch wrench and we're going to get this thing out of the way. We will not be reusing this for the new pump assembly. This is what that factory pressure line looks like. So we're going to get this out of the way. It's trash also. This other one here is going to be your return line. You're going to see that it coils around on the front of the cross member. What Ford did that for was their factory power steering pump had a really small reservoir, so they were trying to gain extra fluid capacity. If you like, you can reuse this. Some people are dead set on reusing it. We've supplied you with a new return line, a short one with a push lock fitting and the adapter fittings for the steering box. If you want to go that route, we've ran them both ways with no difference. If you'd like to use your factory return hose, this is it right here. It's already got the hose on it with the clamp, and you could reuse all this. I'm going to set this one up and reuse this whole factory line. But like I've said, we have supplied you with the correct adapter fittings here. This smaller one here towards the front of the vehicle, again, is the pressure line. So we're going to thread that one into the steering box. This other one here would be your one if you wanted to use a new return line that we supply with the push lock fitting. This is it here. Again, I'm going to use the factory one just to show you that it works. If you were going to use this return line that we provide and the adapter fitting, you would do the same process. You would remove this line here, which is the one that's closer to the firewall on the truck, the bigger of the two. That is your return line. There's a couple clamps down on the face of the cross member that would require a little 1/2-inch socket to remove. I believe there's 2 of them down there. You would remove those, remove this line here from the steering box, and this would completely come out of the way, just like the factory pressure hose. Okay, so we're getting ready to put this new pump assembly in. I'm going to touch on a few things on the back of this pump real quick. This is a plug for your pressure line here. This is on here. I recommend removing it before you start putting this bracket in there because it does get down there, kind of buried deep down in there. When you remove this, there might be a little bit of assembly oil that they use that wants to make its way out. So let's get that drained so it doesn't spill all over you. This would be your return port here where that hose is going to go on. So let's get this pump put in place. We're using the factory hardware. Let's get started. Again, guys, we're going to be using the factory hardware here, so we'll slip a couple of these through. Let's go with our easiest one to get to here. Get this in place and try to get one started. Sometimes I find it's easier to grab your extension with the socket on there, just to help you a little bit, because this thing is a little awkward. Once we've got all of them in there started, a couple threads in each bolt, now we're going to go through and start tightening them all up. This is the pressure line we've provided you with. It's a banjo style connection here. This is a separate fitting than the hose. So what you're going to want to do is I recommend getting this started on here. And then this is going to thread directly into the back of the pump on the pressure port. What you want to make sure that you don't forget to do is once you get this all connected, that you don't forget to tighten this as well, because you will have a leak there. So let's get this one threaded in. Then what we'll do is we'll get this side connected to our steering box, and then we'll go back and we'll tighten everything up once everything is hand threaded in. So we're going to get this pressure line connected to our steering box fitting here, the pressure side. It's going to be, again, the one that's closest to the front bumper of the vehicle. It's kind of a pain in the butt to get in here sometimes. Kind of have to go by braille. If you keep spinning and wiggling that hose around, you'll eventually find it. Or if you have a buddy that could help you from the bottom, or even if you want to try to attack it from that wheel well, it works just as good. So one thing that I kind of forgot to touch on, but we need to make sure that we do, is this adapter fitting. When we go ahead and thread that in the box, we need to make sure that that gets tightened as well. That is another area for a potential leak. So when you put that adapter fitting in that steering box, let's get that thing tightened down first. Smart. So we've got our power steering hose in. We want to make sure that we get all the adapter fitting on the steering box tight, the hose connection to that adapter fitting tight. We're going to get in here with a 7/8 wrench, and we're going to tighten up that banjo bolt that's down in there. And then once that's tight, we're going to tighten our hose connection onto that banjo adapter. All right, guys, we got our banjo bolt tight here. Our hose connection is tight down there at the steering box. The last one is going to be this hose connection here to the banjo adapter. So there's 11/16 wrench on both sides. Let's get this tightened up. All right, so again, we're using the factory cooler line down here just to give some extra fluid capacity and to show you guys that it is doable. So we're going to take that hose that's been sitting down here, we're going to plug it right onto that. Before you do that, usually these pumps get shipped with a little cap on this return port here. So we want to make sure that this cap that comes on, that this pump is shipped with, gets removed before this goes on. So let's Let's put that over there. Get it on. Work that hose into place. And remember, we have this little wing clamp down here, so you're gonna need to get your pliers and get that into position. Next up here is our vacuum line that goes to the vacuum pump. Again, with another wing clamp on it. When you pulled it off, this thing probably kind of got out of the way a little bit. Let's get it closer to the end in position to where it's accessible once it's on there. So push that down, make sure it goes all the way past that hose barb, and then we can get in here with our pliers and get our wing clamp. Squeeze down on that and get that into place. We're set. All right, now we're ready to take our AC compressor. We're gonna get that in place, so we're gonna remove our little strap here, and we're gonna flop this back over. Make sure that you move this wiring out of the way so it doesn't get pinched. Take our factory bolts. Let's get those threaded in by hand. Remember, you don't need to kill these bolts. They're only 8mm, so if you blast them down with an impact, there's a good chance that you're going to, if you're not careful, you'll strip those out. So now we're gonna take our electrical plugs, put them back in place. They should just pop right on. Same with this one here. It's got some little grooves in here. You need to make sure you have them lined up with the sensor itself, or pressure switch. Get that clicked on. That's clicked on. That's clicked on. Remember guys, this system is going to use power steering fluid. We like using this AC Delco stuff, but any power steering fluid, not ATF, any power steering fluid will do. One of these transmission funnels works pretty good. Get it in there, make sure it's inside the reservoir before you start filling anything. And again, we're not trying to fill this up completely to the top, but it is gonna take quite a bit of fluid. It's gonna be a slow process. We'll get the reservoir somewhat filled up, and then we're gonna start cycling the steering wheel back and forth to start working that fluid down into that steering box. What that's gonna do is it's gonna bleed all the air out of the system and ensure that you are completely air-free. We're gonna wanna put about a half a quart in. This thing's completely dry. We're gonna get, like I said, half that quart in, and now we're gonna start cycling the wheel back and forth to start bleeding the air from the system. Again, the wheels are off the ground, not touching, so we need to freely be able to cycle that steering back and forth to make sure that we get all that air out. Again, same process, key on, engine off, and now we're slowly gonna start cycling this steering left to right. Yeah, nothing will be dripping this time out on the floor. It shouldn't be unless you overfilled the reservoir from the beginning. You might get something that comes out. Again, that's why we like to put about 16 ounces or half a quart in that reservoir and slowly start working it back and forth. Working the wheel too quickly back and forth in the left to right position will trap air in your system, so you want to make sure that you slowly do this. You want to probably get about 5 turns back and forth before you need to go over and start checking the reservoir again for fluid level. Once we've bled all the air out of the system by cranking the wheel left and right with tires off the ground, now we're gonna get the serpentine belt put back on this setup, and let's fire it up and let it run. Again, we got our 15mm socket. We're gonna head down here to our tensioner, and it is gonna be in the reverse direction, like you're trying to loosen the bolt, not tighten it. So you'll put a little pressure down, and I like to get everything in place in the last thing is going to be this idler here. So you're going to sneak the belt under there. I'm holding the tension back as I release it. You want to make sure that your belt is on all your pulleys. So like this one down here, it slipped off a little bit. Let's get that into place. Everything else looks good. Now we'll release the tension. We butt all the air out by hand. What I want to do now is get the funnel out of the way, and we're going to fire it up for just a second. Literally fire it up 1 second, turn it off, and see if your fluid level changes. We're going to be adding a little more fluid to this thing before we start turning any wheels or anything like that. We want to make sure that we have all the air completely out. Get that out of the way, and we're going to repeat the process again. We're going to fire it up for just a second, see if the fluid level drops down, and then before we start cycling the steering from left to right. See, the fluid level's dropped. At this point, we're just shy of a full quart in there. Put a little bit more. And like I said, we're just shy of 1 full quart at this point. What we'll do now is we'll do it one more time. We'll fire it up for 1 more second. See if that fluid level goes down. If it doesn't drop too much, I think then we are ready to start cycling the steering wheel back and forth. Before I start it up and start turning the wheel back and forth, I like to just kind of turn it with the engine off back and forth a few more times. Should be able to get the last little bit of our first quart in there at this point. So at this point, I think we're ready to fire this thing up and begin slowly turning the wheels back and forth. We've got our full quart of fluid in there, and here we go. We're gonna slowly work the wheel from left to right, right to left. Let's get about a couple turns in. Couple turns in, and we will shut the truck off. Go back, check our fluid level. Fluid level is good. We're going to start the truck back up again and continue cycling from left to right slowly. At this point, we're going to lower the floor jacks, set this thing on the ground, and we'll continue that same process. Let's fire this thing up, and we'll continue cycling the wheels slowly from left to right, right to left. It's important when you're doing this, going left to right, that you're not banging off the steering stops, because that makes a pressure spike, and that's just going to make more air in the system. So let's get about a good 7 or 8 turns left to right in this thing. We'll shut it off, and we'll recheck our fluid level once again. All right, guys, we're gonna close this thing up and go take it for a drive. Wow, what a difference. Let's pop the hood and let's just double check this fluid level. All right, guys, we butt all the air out of the system. We've topped it off. We brought it right to our cold fill line there. Let's wipe this off and I think we're good to go. All right, guys, this wraps up our install. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us in an email. It's sales@desolatemotorsports.com or by phone during normal business hours. If you want to check out any more information on it, feel free to go on our website, desolatemotorsports.com, and have a good one.